This is Steve Robbins. Welcome to the Get It Done Guys quick and dirty tips to work less and do more. Email has become the dominant form of communication, and we're all overwhelmed by it. And as email has evolved, our tools and behaviors around email have changed. The tips that can best help us manage the email beast are different too. We used to send and receive messages. Now, many email clients, like Gmail, for example, organize those messages into conversations and threads. Yay! And now we have so many conversations and threads that we need to organize those. Boo! We need new email best practices, and we need them now. Fortunately, it's now. Now, you have to manage your subject lines as a major source of organization. Keep your subject lines consistent. Most email programs decide what belongs in a thread or a conversation by looking at the subject. So stick to the same wording when writing subject lines within one thread, and when you reply to a message, don't reword the subject line, or that will lose that message out of the thread. Europa was helping plan Bernice and Melvin's wedding. They finally had a date set, and the communication lines were open with a florist, the staff, caterers, and a photographer. Grandma Cuddles even pitched in, offering to staff the event with hundreds of little tots dressed as waiters. How cute and totally ethical. Grandma Cuddles used the subject line, kiddies, to discuss the labor arrangements. And while Europa wasn't a huge fan of having explicit evidence in the subject line of their back and forth, she decided to keep it there. Any word that she removed from the header would have lost an email from the thread, and she really didn't want that. She might agree to something in Grandma Cuddles' staffing proposal that she really didn't want. But keeping subject lines consistent by thread only solves keeping one thread together. Bernice and Europa have many threads going at once, and all of them need to be organized, and they need a way to do it. Put tags in your subject line. Organize your conversations by tagging the subject lines. Tag a subject by putting a word in the subject line that serves as the tag. Personally, I would put the tag as a hashtag at the end of the subject line. Of course, you need to determine a convention for tagging the subject lines. You can tag subject lines by the project that you're working on. In Europa's case, she can tag the photographer's stream of emails with hashtag photographer at the end of each subject line. She tags the florist conversations with hashtag flowers in the subject line, and then she can just search her inbox for hashtag photographer to get all of the photographer-related conversations. You can also tag based on the actions that need to be taken. For example, if the table layout needs to be determined, that project involves the photographer, the florist, and the architect. You can tag those messages with hashtag layout. Then, when you or any project members need to review what's happening with the table layout, it's just a simple search for hashtag layout. Finally, your work group can design tags that you agree to use just between yourselves, and these might correspond to certain types of issues or negotiations or whatever. That depends, of course, on what kind of work you do. Europa's working on the wedding, where she's agreed on certain tags with all the vendors. But never content to monotask, she hasn't clearly heard about the downsides of multitasking, and never content to monotask, she's also working on staffing a secret attempt to expand the Eastern Bloc into Europe. After a few emails were mistakenly sent to the florist about heavy anti-aircraft artillery, Europa realized that she needed to separate things out a little bit. So she had all of the tags from the wedding tag their emails with hashtag wedding, and her, contacts in the Eastern Bloc tag theirs with hashtag Go Europe. Interestingly, intern MG is spending his next semester in Amsterdam. I'm sure there's no connection. None at all. Right? Reply to the same email thread to bump it to the top. Some people lose email. I'm sure you would never do that, but some people do. You need to remind them of the conversation and do it tactfully. Do this by replying to the same email thread. That will bump the entire conversation to the top of their inbox in most email programs. In some email programs, you can reply to the last message you received or sent in a thread, and it will send your response to everyone else in the thread. In other email programs, however, you have to respond to a message sent by the other person, because if you respond to a message that you sent, it will just reply back to you, which isn't very useful. But if you have a program that does that, just find one of the other person's recent messages and reply to that. Bernice wants a brick oven pizza for the reception, and Europa hasn't heard back from Grandma Cuddles yet about whether the young workers are amenable to kitchen working conditions. Rather than sending a separate message like, "What's up with the heat-tolerant kiddies?" Europa does a reply to the existing conversation with Grandma Cuddles to bump the email to the top of her inbox. This is especially good since Grandma Cuddles isn't exactly the sharpest bayonet in the infantry. Speaking of bayonets, let's just say that she thinks mice are rodents to be eradicated. They're something you stab, not something you click. When you're done with the conversation, you still want it organized so you can find it later. But your existing conversation may have a non-obvious subject line that you'll forget a month from now. Does kiddies refer to labor arrangements or the ring bearers? It's an important distinction. Even the Department of Child Services thinks so. When it's time to archive a thread, forward a message in the thread back to yourself with a new and improved headline, like economy-level waitstaff arrangements or ring bearer arrangements. Then later, you search for the phrase that made sense to you. It will pull up the forwarded message within which contained is the original non-intuitive subject line. Then you can just search for that subject line and recall the entire original conversation easily. Europa had found the perfect system for coordinating the wedding. She organizes individual emails with consistent subject lines. She organizes threads with tags that let her quickly identify projects. And she's also able to keep her plans to expand the Eastern Bloc separate from the florist's confused requests for clarification on what a Soviet executor-class Star Dreadnought ion cannon is. And Grandma Cuddles said that the little tykes are quite hardy, and they can happily carry heavy objects when in close proximity to a 600-degree furnace. Her archives are categorized with meaningful subject lines, and now all Europa needs to do is pull the trigger. Wedding domination, here she comes. This is Steve Robbins. Email questions to getitdone@quickanddirtytips.com. I run webinars and programs to help people build extraordinary careers and extraordinary lives. If you want to know more, visit steverrobbins.com. That's SteverRobbins.com. Work less, do more, and have a great life.